In this video, we will be looking at the differences between query parameters and path variables. We will talk about the purpose they serve, discuss how they're added to a URL, and then I'm going to invoke some REST APIs to demonstrate the usage of query parameters and path variables. Why do we need query parameters or path variables? Let's assume that there is a REST API and we are interested in the data returned by that REST API. However, that API needs input before it can get into action, do its job, and return us the data we are interested in. We can provide that input to the REST API via query parameters or path variables or a combination of both. So essentially, query parameters and path variables are two different ways of passing input to the REST API. Generally speaking, we use query parameters for passing instructions such as specifying sorting order of the data, filtering data, pagination, picking one or more options for a field, or limiting the results. Path variables are used to identify a resource or resources on the server that meet a certain criteria. Let's take a look at an example to understand the difference between the two and see how they are generally used when designing and developing APIs. Let's say that we want to build a REST API that will return the list of movies by year. We also want to make the API capable of returning the list of movies either in alphabetical order or by their release date. We can use a combination of path variables and query parameters as shown in the URLs below. In the first URL, we are passing two inputs to the API. The first input is 2015, which is being sent to the API as a path variable, asking the API to return the list of movies that were released in the year 2015. The second input is sort equals alpha, which is being sent to the API as a query parameter, asking the API to sort the list of movies in alphabetical order. In the second URL, we are asking the API to sort the list of movies by their release date. Sort by release date instruction is being sent as a query parameter. In the third URL, we are asking the API to send the movies released in the year 2015, sort the list of movies by their release date, and notice that we also have a new query parameter, size, and its value is 5, which is an instruction to the API to return only 5 movies. In the fourth URL, we change the path variable value to 2019 and increase the size from 5 to 10. With these inputs, the API will return 10 movies from the year 2019 sorted by their release date. What are query parameters? Query parameters are one or more key value pairs that follow the question mark in the URL. The key and the value are separated by an equal sign. If there are more than one query parameters in the URL, then each parameter is separated from the other by an ampersand. The entire text that appears after the question mark in the URL is known as the query string. Let's take a look at the URLs below. In the first URL, make equals Honda is a query parameter containing a key and a value. Make is the key and its value is Honda, and the query parameter is added after the question mark in the URL. Now what if we have two query parameters in the URL? The second URL has two query parameters separated by an ampersand. The key of the second query parameter is model and its value is accord. Similarly, the third URL has a third query parameter added in the same way we added the second query parameter. The values of query parameters can change. In the fourth URL, you can see that the value of make, model, and color is different from the values we saw above. You cannot change the name of the key in a query parameter and assume that the API will understand the new key name. In the next URL, Notice that we changed the key name from make to manufacturer. The REST API will not be able to extract the value Honda from the query parameter because the API has been programmed to look for a key named make, not manufacturer. Keys that are not known to the REST API will be ignored, and the REST API may return unexpected results. What are path variables? The variable data in the path section of the URL are known as path variables. In the two URLs below, the data in the yellow-colored text are all path variables. Notice that in the second URL, path variable accord is replaced by civic, and path variable green is replaced by black. The REST API knows that these locations in the URL path contain data that changes, data that is variable. The API extracts the variables from the URL path and then uses them to do the job it is programmed to perform. Note that the REST API must know about the location of all path variables in the URL path. Adding variables to the URL path wouldn't work if those variables are unknown to the REST API. It is also possible that your request may not even be received by the REST API if you have added path variables that are not known to the REST API. In the URL below, I added a new variable, 2015, hoping that the REST API would return me all the white-colored Honda Accords from the year 2015. This wouldn't work because the REST API isn't programmed to extract 2015 or any other year value from the URL path. Now I'm going to make some REST API calls, pass inputs to the API in the form of path variables and query parameters, and demonstrate how those inputs transform the results returned by the API. I have created a database of 12 movies from the year 2015. Let's call it the movies database. I've also created a REST API that has access to the movies database, and I will refer to this API as the movies API. In the first API call, I'm asking the movies API to return me the movies from the year 2015 and sort those movies in alphabetical order. 2015 is a path variable and sort equals alpha is a query parameter. As you can see, the API has returned 12 movies from the year 2015 in alphabetical order. There are only 12 movies from the year 2015 in my test database, which is why the REST API has returned only 12 results. The API has returned the results in HTML format. In the next API call, I'm asking the movies API to return the movies from the year 2015, but this time sort the movies by their release date. The movies API has returned the same list of 12 movies we saw earlier, but this time they are sorted by the release date. The movies API is also capable of returning the response in JSON format. Let's ask the movies API to return the list of movies in JSON format. I'm going to add a new query parameter, format equals JSON, and press enter. We have received the same list of 12 movies from the year 2015 sorted by their release date, but this time the display format looks different. Let's take a quick look at the raw JSON data also before we move on. The movies API can also limit the number of movies to a specific number. I'm going to ask the API to return only 5 movies instead of all the 12 movies we have in the database. As you can see, I have added a new query parameter, size, and assigned a value of 5 to it. The API is programmed to look for the value assigned to size and then return only that many movies in the response. Let's change the display format to JSON and call the API again. And here we have the same list of 5 movies, but in JSON format instead of HTML. I will now change the size to 10 and call the API again. As you can see, the API has returned a list of 10 movies from the year 2015 in JSON format ordered by the release date. Let's view the raw JSON response of the API also. Now let's change the format to HTML and leave all other values as they are and call the API again. In here we can see that the API has taken all inputs into consideration and returned a list of 10 movies from the year 2015 in HTML format. If you have found the information presented in this video helpful, then please like this video and subscribe to our channel, as this would help us gauge interest and encourage us to make more videos covering API development and other topics.